This animation documents an account of an educational workshop hosted in 2022. The workshop introduced how digital drawing tools, such as the iPad and the iPencil, can be used to develop students' ideation, concept development, and problem solving. The animation will share how this workshop reflected current research utilizing technology in the design studio and propose how this technology may be paired with more traditional design tools and processes. While not advocating for a total conversion to a digital platform, it's clear there's tremendous value in utilizing the teaching, learning, communication, storytelling, and most importantly, creative problem solving displayed in this workshop. My undergraduate landscape architecture class from the University of Kentucky joined the graduate class from Rutgers University for their Climate Change Praxis Studio fieldwork in New York City. Together, we visited Roosevelt Island, Long Island City, Brooklyn Bridge Park, and Battery Park in Lower Manhattan to see how so-called traditional tools could intersect with digital tools to create a fuller experience. As we gathered on Roosevelt Island to establish the goals of this workshop, I think it's important to begin with what I think is the main benefit, the externalization of ideas, particularly with others. This digital platform allows users to create a visual representation of their design process, but more importantly, to share and collaborate more easily with others. The three main tenets of this approach are the ability to communicate, to reflect, and to associate ideas. And those are translated through both ideas, information, and feedback. All of this is realized through the three important steps of the process: understand both the site and your user, ideate concepts from inspiration, and then iterate those concepts in a third step, all the way through solution. This digital platform accentuates the cross-pollination of ideas with others while accelerating and bringing clarity to the process. The process of understand for this project focused primarily on materiality. The goal was to get students to understand how materiality goes beyond the visual and considers things like adaptation and sensory elements. On site, you could see students using both traditional, meaning measuring tapes, levels, sketchbooks, and digital, their iPads, their cameras, to capture and examine closely. On site at Long Island City, students sought design solutions, but only through deep understanding. It was important to point out that design solutions were needed to mitigate against future flooding, like what occurred during Hurricane Sandy. The process of understanding begins by seeing and then ultimately realizing ideas on the site through illustration and drawing. Students use their sketchbooks and iPads to study the effects of weathering on the Long Island Pier. Then, they use the iPads to research why this was happening and understand more about the conditions. Understanding the complexity of the problem and the need for a thoughtful and innovative response. In Brooklyn, we talked with students about ideation, specifically about how the iPad can supplement the traditional sketchbook. Students were shown how the iPad can collect information and store it, as well as share it across users on site. It was in this interplay that students began to see the value of using traditional and digital methods in coordination, specifically of how the iPad amplifies the skill of association, and using this for inspiration, learning about the history, and to spark ideas and broaden what is possible, making the familiar strange and the strange familiar. A specific example on site was that students could use the iPad to look up the history of the area and realize the materials being used on site and the significance to the history. As we all boarded the ferry and headed for our last stop of the day, both faculty and students had a thoughtful discussion about these first two phases of the process, understanding and ideation, and how both analog and digital tools can work best in concert. We find ourselves in Battery Park, focusing on the third and final phase of the process, iteration. Students are iterating an initial design idea and translating it onto the site. An idea begins in a sketchbook, jumps to a student's iPad, back to a sketchbook, each time with a different focus and level of attention to detail. You can see here on site the layering of ideas and how a design takes shape. It begins at a different scale with notation and ideation, and when passed around, a series of doodles combine and transform into an idea. The goal of this workshop was to continue a dialogue from which future problem solvers can build an approach that enables them to imagine, see, conceptualize, and develop transformative ideas and solutions. Students' comfort and proficiency to develop ideas is critical and should be valued. This workshop allowed these newly evolving design approaches to be paired, juxtaposed, and integrated with traditional methods. Our research has found that the ever-evolving digital platform helps foster association, combination, and imagination of ideas. The workshop also provided an opportunity to brainstorm on where this digital approach may be evolving in the future and how best to think about the marriage of digital and analog tools. On a personal level, I think it's invaluable for students to be part of this exploration and discussion of ideas. As they are introduced to the tools that will make them successful practitioners, they were also challenged on how best to learn, communicate, and solve problems in an ever-evolving world. This is the dialogue I hope they continue to have beyond academic and disciplinary boundaries.